My name is Amir Beckett, 31 years old, and right now I'm sitting in an 8-square-meter motel room in Phoenix, surrounded by the acrid stench of burnt electronics and the dying whine of a computer fan that sounds like it's on its last breath. I've lost count of how many nights in a row I haven't slept. On the desk is some customer's ancient Dell stuck in a blinding blue screen boot loop, while my own eyes burn like someone rubbed chili powder in them. I rub them, hands shaking as I grip the screwdriver, but my mind keeps drifting away. If I let my eyes close for even a second, I'll collapse right here among the tangled motherboards and cables. I know I'm not allowed to break, because if I break, even for a moment, how will I pay the interest tomorrow? How will I buy Dad's medicine? How will I survive another day? My schedule has been a deadly loop for years now. 6 a.m. I'm already at the mansion of Mr. Ellis Davenport, the 80-year-old billionaire I work for as a caregiver. I change diapers, bathe him, cook soup, push the wheelchair, listen to his stories from the old days. All of it done gently, patiently, with a smile, even when my body is screaming to collapse. 2 p.m. I get home, take a cold shower, scarf down a stale piece of bread, and head to the office building where I work as a janitor from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Mopping floors, vacuuming, emptying trash, the bleach fumes burning straight into my brain. 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. I drive for a food delivery app. My old car rattles through the suffocating Phoenix night heat, sweat soaking my back because the AC died long ago. After that, I drag myself back to the motel and fix customers' computers until the sky starts to lighten. Most days I get about 2 hours of sleep. My body is in constant dull pain, my head spins like I've got heat stroke 24/7. But I don't dare stop. I don't dare complain. Every dollar I earn flies straight into debts, utilities, and medicine for Easton and Ivy Beckett, my parents. My father, Easton Beckett, 58, a hot-tempered, foul-mouthed man who spends his days glued to the TV yelling at the screen. He's been unemployed for 8 years, ever since he got fired for arguing with his boss. Since then, he only knows how to borrow from loan sharks and bet on football, leaving me to clean up the mess. My mother, Ivy Beckett, 55, loves bright red nail polish and posting fake designer bag selfies, loves bragging to the neighbors that my son works for a big corporation. She's cold and calculating. She has never once asked, "Have you eaten?" Only, "How much can you send this month?" 3 years ago, that fateful day, I still remember it like it was yesterday. A sweltering summer afternoon. My phone rang. Mom's shrill voice, "Amir, come home right now." Something terrible happened. I dropped my shift and raced to the rundown house on the outskirts of town. The second I pushed the door open, I heard a loud slam on the table and shouting. 3 tattooed thugs in black stood in our living room. One tapped a baseball bat against the floor. Dad was cowering in the kitchen corner, face ashen. Mom was clutching her head, sobbing, "Son, save us." They were there to collect 50 grand, money Dad had borrowed from loan sharks to invest in stocks, but really to gamble. Compound interest had turned it into nearly 100,000. The leader smirked and pointed at Dad. "If you don't pay today, don't blame me for what happens next." I saw Dad shaking, Mom begging like she was about to die. In that moment, one stupid thought filled my head. I can't let them hurt my parents. I stepped forward, voice trembling. "Let me. I'll pay it for them." The leader looked me up and down and laughed. "This kid's got guts. How much do you even make to take on your parents' debt?" But in the end, they agreed. Because back then, I had 2 steady jobs. I signed that cursed debt contract in my own name with a brutal 15% monthly interest rate. From that second, my life officially went to hell. Since then, every burden has fallen on my shoulders. I picked up extra shifts, took on more jobs, cut out every luxury. Even a 25-cent pack of instant noodles I split into 2 meals just to survive. And my parents, they have never once asked if I'm tired, if I've eaten, or how many hours I've slept. They only ever say one thing, the sentence I've heard so many times I want to scream. "You're the son. It's your duty to support your parents." Every time Mom's number lights up my phone, my stomach knots. I already know what's coming. "Son, we're we're short on living expenses this month. Send another 500, okay? Or, Dad's back hurts. Buy him that $200 joint supplement. I grit my teeth and send it, down to the very last cent in my account, because I'm still stupid enough to believe that one day they'll look at me, that one day they'll say thank you, or at least, you've been through a lot. But that day never comes. I'm so exhausted that some nights while fixing computers, my hands shake so badly I drop a screw and have to crawl on the cold floor for an hour looking for it. Sometimes in the dead of night, I look in the mirror and see a man with dark circles under his eyes, sunken cheeks, hair falling out in clumps from stress. And I ask myself, are you even living, Amir, or just existing? But then I tell myself, keep going. Hold on, because if I fall, who will take care of Mom and Dad? Who will pay the debt? Who will stand by me? No one. I'm completely alone. I wipe the tears with my filthy sleeve, pick up the screwdriver again. The laptop is still broken. The customer is waiting. Tomorrow at 6 a.m. I have to be at Mr. Ellis's house again. I take a deep breath and force my eyes to focus on the glowing blue screen in front of me. And then that fateful night arrived. I was driving through the streets of Phoenix at 10:30 p.m., delivering my last order of the night. Suddenly the world spun. Everything went black. I only had time to hear the screech of tires on asphalt, the blaring of horns, and then the hot smell of pavement rushing toward my face. After that, complete nothingness. When I opened my eyes again, a sterile white ceiling glared down at me under harsh fluorescent lights. The sharp stench of antiseptic hit my nose. My left arm burned from the IV needle. My right arm was numb from being pinned under me too long. Panic surged as I looked around. Hospital bed, IV bag, heart monitor beeping steadily. I was in a hospital. A nurse stood beside me, checking the machines. My voice came out a rasp. Sister, what happened to me? She looked at me with pity. You collapsed in the middle of the street. Luckily, someone called 911. Severe exhaustion, serious dehydration, irregular heartbeat. You're lucky they got you here in time. I hadn't even processed it when the doctor walked in, face grave. He shone a light in my eyes, checked reflexes, then sighed. Amir Beckett, you have severe physical exhaustion, anemia, dehydration, and early-stage arrhythmia. You need to stay here at least 5 to 7 days for IV fluids and monitoring. If you keep going like this, you could die. 5 to 7 days? I almost laughed in despair. Where was I supposed to get the money for the hospital bill? Who would cover my shifts? I lay there staring at the white ceiling, tears running backward into my ears without bothering to wipe them away. I hadn't even dared think about how to tell my parents. Then a realization hit me like a punch in the gut. I had been awake for over 10 hours since regaining consciousness. The hospital said they had called my family, yet not a single person had shown up. I told myself, they must be busy. Dad's back probably hurts again. Mom must have taken him to the doctor. They're probably worried sick but couldn't arrange it yet. I spun a dozen excuses for them, the same way I'd been doing for years. For 5 full days in the hospital, I handled everything myself. Signed the forms, dragged myself in a wheelchair to the cafeteria to buy the cheapest meal because I couldn't afford delivery. Brushed my teeth with shaking hands in the shared bathroom because I was still too weak. One day I had a high fever. A kind nurse saw me curled up alone and brought me a cup of warm water and a Tylenol. She asked, "Where's your family?" I just gave a crooked smile. My parents. They're busy. On the 4th day, my phone finally rang. Mom's number. My heart raced with a flicker of hope. I answered weakly, "Hello, Mom. I'm in the hospital. Why haven't you and Dad come to see me?" Not one word of concern, not a single, "Are you okay?" Mom went straight to the point, voice ice cold. "Amir, handle the hospital bills yourself, okay? Get better quickly so you can go back to work. End of the month, the interest is due, plus Dad needs his medicine. Don't make me remind you." I couldn't speak. My throat closed up completely. All I managed was a choked, "Yes, I understand." Then she hung up. I let the phone fall onto my chest and stared at the ceiling again. This time, the tears didn't run backward. They poured out and soaked the pillow. Not from physical pain, but from the sudden, excruciating clarity. In my parents' eyes, I had never been their son. I was just a walking ATM, a money-making tool, a punching bag for all their responsibilities. And now that the ATM was broken, they couldn't even be bothered to come check on it. In the loneliest days of my life, when I truly believed I had been abandoned by the entire world, my phone suddenly lit up with a name I never expected to see: Ellis Davenport. The 80-year-old man, chairman of Davenport Pharmaceutical Holdings, the person I cared for every morning, called me in his raspy but warm voice with the simplest question: "Amir, are you feeling better today?" That simple question from someone who shared no blood with me warmed my heart more than anything ever had. I was the one supposed to be asking him that. I was the one paid to care for him. Yet here he was, checking on me. Every single day he called, right on time, like a small ritual. Some days he told stories of starting his company in a damp rented room, sleeping beside piles of losing contracts. Some days he just asked what I ate, how much I had slept. Some days he told me to rest, that he could wait, that someone else could take care of him for a few days. Every word pulled me back from the edge of the abyss. While my own family turned their backs, while friends stayed silent, while the world seemed determined to grind me into the dirt, an 80-year-old billionaire who didn't even need to remember my name was the only person who cared whether I existed. Those calls kept me standing, kept my heart from shattering one more time, kept me from feeling like nothing more than a breathing corpse waiting to be discarded. And for the first time in years, I felt not like a burden. I had been caring for Mr. Ellis for 2 years already. The first day I stepped into his mansion on the Scottsdale Hills, I thought I had wandered onto a Hollywood movie set. Automatic iron gates, ancient olive trees, an infinity pool overlooking the red desert at sunset. But when I pushed open the door to the master bedroom, all I saw was a frail old man curled up on an enormous king-size bed, his cloudy eyes staring at the ceiling as if gazing into an endless void. He had end-stage Parkinson's, compounded by diabetes and heart complications. He moved only by wheelchair, had to be spoon-fed, wore diapers, needed full-body bathing, completely dependent on his caregiver. Before me, 7 others had quit within a single year because he was notoriously difficult and exacting. I had no choice. I needed the money. So I stayed. But strangely, after just 1 week, I no longer saw him as the boss. I started seeing him as the grandfather I never had. I lifted him from bed to wheelchair in tiny, gentle movements, afraid I might snap his brittle bones. I sat patiently while he chewed each spoonful of bird's nest porridge, even if it took an hour for him to swallow half a bowl. I wiped the sweat from his forehead when he had a fever, quietly humming the old songs he loved even though my voice was terrible. I never complained, not even on the days I finished fixing computers at 4 a.m., drove straight to his house by 6 a.m. to relieve the night shift, eyes bloodshot yet still smiling. "Good morning, sir. Did you sleep well?" He would look at me for a long time, then ask softly, "Why don't you rest, son? You look like you could collapse any second." I'd just shake my head. "I'm fine. Don't worry about me." On the rare afternoons when he was lucid, we sat by the huge window overlooking the desert. He told me about starting out with a tiny pharmacy in Texas, being cheated twice until he lost everything, nearly going bankrupt 3 times, being betrayed by his best friend who sold his drug formulas to competitors. His raspy voice would say, "You know, Amir, poverty isn't the scariest thing. The scariest thing is being stabbed in the back by the person you trusted most." I listened in silence, and for the first time I told him about my parents, about the debts, about working 4 jobs a day, about falling asleep in elevators. I hadn't meant to tell him, but his words opened a valve I had kept sealed for years. I cried, embarrassed, wiping tears with the sleeve of my uniform, apologizing over and over. He simply patted the back of my hand with his thin, veiny one. "Cry, son. Every man has moments of weakness." From then on, he started noticing the little things about me. When he saw I was losing weight, he told his private chef to pack extra meals for me to take home. When I coughed, he secretly slipped expensive supplements into my hand. Every morning he asked, "How many hours did you sleep last night?" Or "Have you eaten breakfast?" As if those were the most important things in the world, not the billion-dollar pharmaceutical empire he had built. He taught me things life had never taught me. How to keep your dignity when you're poor. Never bow your head and beg for something that isn't yours. How to protect your boundaries. People can only take advantage of you if you let them. How to face the truth. Some people gave birth to you, but that doesn't mean they are your real family. Every word cut straight into the deepest wounds in my heart, but they were the kind of cuts that slowly began to heal me. The day I was discharged and returned to work, Mr. Ellis saw me walk into his room and his old eyes suddenly lit up. He reached out a trembling hand toward me, voice thick with emotion. "Amir, you're back." Before I could even greet him, he said, "Sit down, son. Don't do anything yet. Just rest." I sat in the chair beside his bed, struggling to hold back tears. He asked, "How have you been these past few days?" That question was the drop that made the cup overflow. I broke down and cried like a child. I told him everything. The night I collapsed in the street, losing 2 jobs in a single day, the days in the hospital alone, signing forms myself, wheeling myself to the cafeteria because I couldn't afford delivery, the phone call from my mother whose first words weren't, "Are you okay?" but "Handle the hospital bills yourself." I sobbed uncontrollably, finally daring to admit out loud how much it hurt. He said nothing, just listened quietly. When I finished, he placed his trembling hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. "Keep going, son. Tell me from the beginning." So I did. I told him about my childhood, about parents who never once attended a single parent-teacher conference, about getting the highest grades in class and being told, "So what if you're smart? Will that make your life any better?" About how they started taking out loans in my name when I was 20 and said, "You're the eldest son. It's your duty to support us." I talked until my voice gave out, with nothing left to be ashamed of. Mr. Ellis was silent for a long time. Then he looked at me, eyes glistening. "Amir, do you know who you remind me of?" I shook my head. "You remind me of myself when I was young. I also thought I had to carry the whole world on my shoulders. I also thought blood ties were something you could never let go of." He sighed, his voice soft but firm. "But I was wrong. And you're wrong too." He gripped my hand tighter, even though his was ice cold and shaking. "You're not guilty for wanting to be loved, but you have the right to choose who deserves to stay in your life, even if they're not blood." For the first time in my life, I felt the embrace of a real adult, even if it was only a frail pat on the shoulder from an old man nearing the end of his days. Yet that pat was warmer than every half-hearted hug I had ever received from my parents combined. Before I left that day, he looked at me for a long time and said one final thing. "Amir, remember this. Never let anyone, even your parents, define your worth by how much money you make. You deserve to live for yourself. One day, you'll understand." I nodded, tears falling again, but this time they were tears of relief. I walked out of Mr. Ellis's mansion as dusk was falling, my heart a little lighter but still weighed down by the looming interest payment due this weekend. I dialed my parents, planning to ask whether they had prepared anything for the debt or if they needed me to send more money. The phone rang 3 times before Dad picked up. His voice was strange, cheerful, excited, almost giggling. "Hello, Amir. We're having a party at home tonight. Dad's a bit busy. I'll call you tomorrow, okay?" In the background, thumping music, glasses clinking, loud laughter and chatter, as if the entire neighborhood had gathered. Before I could say another word, he hung up. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, phone still pressed to my ear. Busy? Busy partying? While I had just gotten out of the hospital, lost 2 jobs, and was scraping together every cent to pay the interest? Then my phone lit up again, a social media notification from Mom. I opened it and my heart stopped. The photo she posted. A long table draped in white linen, red wine sparkling in crystal glasses, plates of lobster and Wagyu beef, a 3-tier cake. Mom in a brand new dress, pearl necklace around her neck, grinning ear to ear beside Dad, who was also in a brand new suit raising a champagne flute high. The caption hit me like a slap in the face. Turning a new page in life starting today. Thank you, God. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned, my mind blank. A new page? With what money? While I was killing myself with 4 jobs, eating stale bread, falling asleep at the wheel just to send them every dollar I earned. A sick feeling rose in my throat. I jumped in the car and drove straight to my parents' house. When I arrived, the front door was wide open, colored lights flashing, EDM blasting. I stepped inside. The stench of alcohol hit me like a wall. Neighbors, friends, relatives, hundreds of people crammed into the yard. Lavish food overflowed on tables, balloons floated everywhere, everyone holding glasses and toasting. Dad stood in the middle of the crowd, face flushed from drinking, shouting, "Thank you all for coming. Cheers." The scene stunned me so much I accidentally knocked over a potted plant nearby. People turned, saw me, registered surprise for half a second, then immediately turned away and kept laughing and talking as if I were invisible. Not one hug. Not one "you just got out of the hospital, how are you?" I stood there like a ghost in my wrinkled uniform, hair matted with sweat, surrounded by strangers. I walked toward my parents. My voice shook. "Dad? Mom? What's going on?" Mom glanced at me with an ice-cold look like I was a stranger. Dad bellowed, slurring from the alcohol. "What are you doing here? We're having fun. Don't ruin it." I tried to stay calm. "I saw the photo Mom posted. Did you win the lottery? How much?" Mom smirked and took a sip of champagne. "Yeah, $3 million. From now on, we don't need the pocket change you send anymore. We don't need a self-righteous brat like you. $3 million. My parents had won $3 million. I stood frozen amid the music, the laughter, the congratulations. Not one invitation, not one phone call to tell me. They were celebrating as if I had never existed, as if the years I had sold my blood and soul were simply expected, not worth mentioning. I swallowed hard. If that's the case, could you at least pay back what I've sent you over the years? And the debts I took on in my name? They're pressing me really hard." The noise suddenly died. Every eye turned to me. Dad's face turned purple with rage. He pointed at me and screamed in front of all the relatives. "What did you just say? You ungrateful bastard. I raised you, and now that I have money, you want it back. You piece of trash." Mom jumped in, voice shrill. "It's your duty. Whose duty is it if not yours? You're the son. You're supposed to provide. We don't need you anymore. Get out." Whispers erupted all around. "That kid's so rude. Demanding money from his own parents. What an ungrateful little." I stood there under the contemptuous stares and pointing fingers, feeling the whole world laughing in my face. I turned and walked out of the yard, legs heavy as lead, tears falling without bothering to wipe them. Humiliation, shame, and a pain so deep I couldn't feel anything anymore. The days that followed passed like a long, unending hangover I couldn't wake from. I worked on autopilot, hands trembling as I held a glass of water, sleep coming in broken fragments filled with images of that party. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, drunk, triumphant, happy, and their words repeated in my head like a verdict. I kept telling myself it was just drunk talk, or they were stressed, or they lost control because the lottery win was so sudden. I clung to every tiny excuse like a drowning man clutching straws. Even though it hurt so much I could barely breathe, my heart still wanted to believe my parents weren't that cruel, that it was all a misunderstanding. 3 days later, I went back to the house, hoping the other night had just been drunken nonsense, hoping they would apologize, hoping they would say, "Come inside, son." But the door was ajar. I pushed it open. The house was empty. TV gone, fridge gone, furniture gone, even the old floor fan gone. Bare walls where pictures once hung, In the kitchen, only the lonely dining table remained. Out front, a huge sign, "House Sold." I ran through the rooms like a madman, shouting their names until my voice gave out. No one. On the kitchen table lay a thick stack of debt papers, all in my name, interest piled sky high, due dates marked in red. Beside it, a small note in Mom's scrawled handwriting. "Amir, Mom and Dad are starting a new life now. You're grown up. You can take care of yourself. Don't look for us anymore. Handle the remaining debts on your own. Good luck." I collapsed onto the cold floor, clutching the stack of papers to my chest, staring at the empty house, and laughed. A dry, bitter laugh that tasted like ash. They had abandoned me, without a goodbye, without returning a single cent, without the slightest remorse. They took every dollar of the lottery money, sold the house, vanished, and left me with a mountain of debt and a shattered heart. I sat there for hours until night fell and the neighbors turned off all their lights. I didn't cry anymore. There was only a cold, hollow space in my chest. For the first time in my life, I understood with excruciating clarity. I had no family. I never really had one. And perhaps I never would. But that very night, as I walked out of the empty house with the stack of debt papers in my hand, I also stepped through another door, one that led to freedom, even though I didn't know it yet. All I knew was that from this moment on, I no longer owed anyone anything, except myself. The months that followed dragged by slowly, but they were also merciless to me. I tried to rebuild my life from the ashes my parents had left behind. Fortunately, I found a more stable job at a small tech company in downtown Phoenix. IT technician handling repairs and system maintenance with a fixed salary and regular hours, no more running between 4 shifts like before. Since the crushing financial burden from my parents was finally gone, life felt a little lighter, even though I still had to finish paying off the remaining debts they had dumped on me. I started sleeping more, eating properly, and even bought a second-hand mattress to replace the thin one I'd been sleeping on directly on the motel floor. The old debts were still there, but at least I no longer had to dread the brutal monthly interest payments. Life seemed to be opening a tiny crack of hope. Yet the person who worried me most now was Mr. Ellis Davenport. He was visibly weakening day by day, and I couldn't help spending even more time caring for him. Every morning I arrived at the mansion earlier than usual, sat by his bedside longer, and listened to his old stories told in a frail, whispering voice. He had grown frighteningly thin, his skin wrinkled and pale, his once trembling hands now barely able to grip anything. I lived in fear every single day because I knew he didn't have much time left. Then one November morning, when Phoenix was unusually chilly, I pushed open the mansion door as always. The housekeeper was waiting in the hallway, head bowed, eyes red from crying. She didn't need to say much. I understood instantly. "He passed at 3 in the morning," she whispered, voice breaking. Peacefully. No pain. I stood frozen in the grand foyer, feeling as though someone had squeezed my heart until it stopped. The only real family I had ever known, even though we shared no blood, was gone forever. The funeral was grand, attended by hundreds, business partners, politicians, even the press. His casket was draped in pure white flowers. The cold scent of lilies filled the air. I stood quietly in the farthest corner of the hall, wearing the only black suit I owned, one I had bought secondhand for cheap. I didn't dare step closer. I just watched the casket being carried away while silent tears fell. His children and grandchildren stood in the front rows, all dressed in expensive black, but I didn't see a single tear on any of their faces. As they passed where I stood, I clearly overheard their whispers about the inheritance. "I wonder how Dad divided it up," one said. "I hope I get the Malibu beach house," another replied. They were talking about money at their own father's and grandfather's funeral. I lowered my head, heart aching for Mr. Ellis. He had been alone right up to his very last moment. 1 week after the funeral, my phone rang with an unknown number. The caller introduced himself as Landon Reed, Mr. Ellis Davenport's personal attorney. He asked me to come to his office on Friday for the reading of the will. I nearly dropped the phone in shock. What did I have to do with the will? I was just his caregiver. But I agreed immediately. I wanted to be there, to say one final thank you to him, even if he could no longer hear it. On the appointed day, I put on the same black suit and drove my beat-up car to the gleaming glass skyscraper downtown. The elevator took me to the 42nd floor. When the doors opened, I stepped into a vast conference room with a polished walnut table, leather chairs, and the heavy scent of expensive perfume in the air. Instantly, 30 pairs of eyes snapped toward me in perfect unison. Jace Davenport, Mr. Ellis's eldest son, around 50, face perpetually red from alcohol, sat there looking annoyed. Layla Davenport, the youngest daughter, about 45, platinum blonde hair and a Hermes bag, gave me a disdainful once-over. The rest were grandchildren and distant relatives, all dripping in designer clothes, staring at me like I was an alien from another planet. A woman whispered loudly enough for me to hear, "Wait, isn't that Grandpa's caregiver?" Another snickered, "What on earth is he doing here?" Curiosity quickly turned into open mockery. Jace smirked and asked loudly, "Wrong room, pal? Or did someone let you in by mistake?" Layla looked me up and down with obvious contempt. "This place isn't for hired help. You're in the wrong building." I lowered my head and answered quietly, "Mr. Reed called me." Landon Reed, the tall, thin man in gold-rimmed glasses, nodded and confirmed my name was on the guest list. The room reluctantly fell silent, but the hostile stares still clung to me like they wanted to chase me out. The reading of the will began normally. Mr. Reed read each item in a calm, professional tone. This mansion to Jace, that subsidiary to Layla, various charitable trusts, shares in the parent company divided among the grandchildren. Everyone nodded, clearly satisfied. Then Mr. Reed paused, cleared his throat, and continued, "And the final bequest in the will. Mr. Ellis Davenport leaves to Mr. Amir Beckett the sum of $10 million along with a handwritten letter." The entire conference room exploded like a bomb had gone off. A chair toppled as someone leapt to their feet. Jace slammed his fist on the table, stood up red-faced with fury, and glared at me as if I had invaded sacred family territory. Layla let out a loud, mocking laugh, pointed straight at me, and accused, "That servant? He must have sweet-talked Dad. Took advantage of a sick old man to rob our family." The relatives immediately joined in, pointing and whispering that a lowlife like me could only get money through lowlife means. When Mr. Reed reaffirmed that the will was completely legal, witnessed, recorded on video with Mr. Ellis reading it himself while fully lucid, Jace charged toward me, face twisted in rage, demanding I immediately return the Davenport family's property. Layla stood behind him, arms crossed, staring at me with eyes as cold as blades, treating me like garbage. Her attitude fueled even louder insults from the others, turning the room into a storm of hatred and humiliation. I was attacked from every side with venomous words, hateful glares, and blatant contempt. All I could do was stand there, stunned, trying my hardest to stay calm. Unable to defend myself or say anything, I finally turned silently and walked out, leaving behind the Davenport family's rage, a storm I didn't understand why I had become the center of. I stumbled out of the elevator, collapsed onto the floor, and sobbed with my head in my hands. $10 million, a handwritten letter, and a new nightmare that had only just begun. I didn't understand why Mr. Ellis had done this for me. All I knew was that from this moment on, my life would never be peaceful again. But deep in my heart, I could still hear Mr. Ellis's voice whispering one last time, "You deserve it, Amir. You deserve to live with dignity." Less than 4 hours after the will reading, the lawsuit was filed. They accused me of unduly influencing an elderly person, coercing Mr. Ellis into changing his will while he was no longer of sound mind, and exploiting his illness to steal family assets. The first tabloid headline appeared on a local rag at 8 p.m. that same night, with a doctored photo of me standing beside Mr. Ellis's bed and a screaming banner, "Greedy caregiver steals $10 million from dead billionaire." That night, social media detonated. Hundreds of fake accounts were created just to smear me. Fabricated screenshots flooded the internet. Fake chats where I begged Mr. Ellis for money. Doctored audio clips of me saying, "The old man's about to die, let's cash in quick." My photos were photoshopped onto a butler's uniform, mop bucket in hand, grinning wickedly under captions like, "From caregiver to thief, in one easy step." The hashtag Amir Beckett scammer spread like wildfire. Overnight, I became public enemy number one in Phoenix. The next morning, when I stepped out of my motel room to buy bread, the landlady stared at me with open disgust. Two neighbors gossiping on the stoop fell silent the moment they saw me, then whispered just loud enough, "That's the con artist. Looked so innocent. Who would have thought?" I walked past with my head down, heart pounding like it would burst out of my chest. By afternoon, even the kids in the complex were pointing. "Mom, is that the guy who stole the billionaire's money?" In just 1 week, the fragile calm I had managed to rebuild was completely shattered. The IT company I worked for received hundreds of anonymous emails with screenshots of the articles. My manager called me in, face full of regret. "Amir, I don't want to do this, but the director ordered me to let you go. I'm sorry." I was fired that same afternoon. No final paycheck, no reference letter. Unemployed again. Broke again. My reputation destroyed again. I started fearing to leave my room. Every time I opened the door, I braced myself for the contemptuous stares. One day at the supermarket, an entire aisle suddenly went silent. People parted like I carried the plague. An old lady I used to give my bus seat to shook her head at me. "Good heavens, that's him? Looks so harmless, but look what he did." I barricaded myself in my 8-square-meter room, lights off, curtains drawn, only daring to peek through the gap. I stopped turning on my phone. Every time I did, hundreds of hate messages, death threats, and photos of my face pasted onto corpses poured in. I lay on the bed hugging my pillow, asking myself what I had done to deserve the entire world turning its back on me a second time. Then one rainy evening, a knock like thunder shook the door. I looked through the peephole. A young guy in a black hoodie, arms covered in tattoos, face twisted in rage. Jace Davenport's grandson. I recognized him from the funeral. He pounded on the door so hard the whole row of rooms rattled. I opened it just a crack, the security chain still latched. He shoved his face into the gap, voice ice cold. "Listen up, you piece of trash. You have 1 week to voluntarily renounce the inheritance and sign everything back over. If not, I'll send people to deal with you. Don't think hiding in this rat hole will save you. I found you once, I'll find you again and again, until you give back what's ours." He spat on the doorstep and walked off, leaving me shaking uncontrollably. I slammed the door, slid down to the floor, heart racing. I vomited in the shared bathroom from sheer terror. I knew I couldn't fight them. They had money, power, and the whole city on their side. I had nothing. I was alone. I lay curled up on the cold floor thinking I might actually die this time. And then, in that moment of deepest despair, I suddenly remembered. The letter. I lunged for my old backpack, hands trembling as I pulled out the cream-colored envelope Mr. Reed had given me at the reading. I had never dared open it, out of fear, out of pain, out of feeling unworthy. Now I had nothing left to lose. I tore it open with shaking fingers. Mr. Ellis's frail, spidery handwriting appeared. "My dear Amir, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. I am sorry for leaving you such a heavy burden. You are the only person in my final years who treated me with kindness, that asked for nothing in return. You bathed me, fed me, listened to my stories. And never once did I see a trace of calculation in your eyes. You reminded me that I was still a human being, not just a money-printing machine for my descendants to spend. $10 million is not meant to make you a millionaire. It is the key to your freedom. Freedom from the people who have bled you dry for years. Freedom from the contemptuous looks you get just for being poor. I want you to live the rest of your life according to your own values. Kindness, patience, honesty, and never letting anyone define you by the balance in your bank account. Live with decency, Amir. Not for me, For yourself, I was proud to call you my grandson, with all the love of an old man about to leave Ellis Davenport. I finished reading and tears poured onto the paper. I cried, not from fear anymore, but because for the first time in my life, someone who shared no blood with me had believed in me and loved me so much that he risked his entire fortune to protect me. He had truly seen me, when even my own parents never bothered to. I clutched the letter to my chest, lying on the cold floor, but for the first time in days I no longer felt alone. He had given me something worth far more than $10 million. He had given me a reason to keep living, and this time I decided I would no longer run. The next 2 months were both the longest and the most beautiful months of my life. I didn't hire expensive lawyers or a PR firm to clean up my image. I only had Landon Reed, the man Mr. Ellis trusted completely, and the truth. Together we prepared every document, every medical record, every video Mr. Ellis had recorded himself while still healthy, his voice clear and strong. I am of completely sound mind and voluntarily leave $10 million to Amir Beckett, the grandson I have chosen. The Davenport family threw money around like water. Top-tier attorneys hired dirty media teams that kept smearing me. But every time they posted a new attack, I simply uploaded a short clip of Mr. Ellis laughing and talking happily with me, with a single caption, "He chose. I'm just keeping my promise to him." People started to doubt. They began asking, if this guy really was a scammer, why didn't he run? Why is he still here fighting to the end? I held on. Some nights I sat alone in my motel room rereading Mr. Ellis's letter until the paper wore thin, telling myself, I can't fall. He believed in me. And then the final court date arrived. Maricopa County Superior Court was packed. Reporters crowded the hallway, cameras flashing nonstop. I walked in wearing the same old black suit, the one from the will reading, my steps steadier than I ever thought possible. Across the aisle sat the entire Davenport clan, Jace scowling, Layla glaring, the grandchildren glued to their phones, probably reading the latest online hate. The tension was electric. Every eye in the room waited to see who was right and who was wrong. Landon Reed stood to present the defense. One by one, he laid out the evidence. The original will with Mr. Ellis's handwritten signature notarized and witnessed. An 8-minute video Mr. Ellis recorded himself from his wheelchair, voice firm. I know my children and grandchildren won't be happy, but my decision is made. Amir is the only one who ever loved me for real. I leave him $10 million so he can live the life he deserves. Full medical records from 3 separate hospitals confirming Mr. Ellis was completely lucid until his final days. And finally, the handwritten letter. Mr. Reed read every word aloud to the entire courtroom, his voice breaking at the line, "You deserve to live with dignity." Each piece of evidence landed like a punch in the face of the Davenport family. They objected wildly. Their lawyers jumped up shouting that the video was edited, that I had drugged his water, that the letter was forged. But the judge shut down every claim one by one. The more they struggled, the more their greed and desperation showed. Jace pounded the table, Layla wailed dramatically, the grandchildren hung their heads in shame. When the judge, a stern older woman, banged her gavel and declared, "The last will and testament of Ellis Davenport is fully valid and lawful. There is no evidence of undue influence or incapacity. The plaintiff's claims are dismissed. Mr. Amir Beckett is entitled to receive the full bequest of $10 million. The courtroom fell dead silent. Jace slumped forward, slamming his fist so hard his chair toppled. Layla stared at me with murder in her eyes, but for once she had nothing left to say. They had lost. Completely. I stood, bowed to the judge, and walked out of the courtroom in proud silence. No cheering, no smiling, no gloating. I simply felt as though I had walked through a 2-year storm and could finally breathe clean air again, like a real human being. Reporters swarmed me for comments. I gave them only one sentence. I never needed the money to prove I'm innocent. The truth did that for me. Public opinion flipped overnight. From scammer, I became a symbol of patience and decency. Major outlets ran headlines like, "Poor caregiver defeats billionaire dynasty with one handwritten letter." Amir Beckett trended for weeks. Strangers sent flowers to my motel room, letters of support, even random Venmo transfers of a few dollars with notes. "Sorry we got you wrong." I didn't give long interviews or go on TV to boast. I quietly completed the paperwork. $10 million hit my account on a beautiful spring morning. I didn't buy a supercar, travel the world, or throw lavish parties. I did small, ordinary things that had once been impossible dreams when I was broke. Bought a modest 2-bedroom house on the outskirts of Phoenix with a backyard big enough for a few cacti and an old swing. Paid off every last cent of the debt my parents had left me. Not out of forgiveness, but to cut the final thread tying me to them forever. Re-enrolled in college to finish the computer engineering degree I had abandoned 10 years earlier to support my family. Started a small company that repairs and upgrades computers for seniors and low-income families. Named it Ellis Tech after him. My new life flowed by with an almost unbelievable peace. Mornings, I wake up early, cook breakfast, go to work. Afternoons, I come home, water the plants. Evenings, I read or fix computers for clients. No luxury, no showing off, no noisy friends. Just me, my little house, and a freedom I never dared dream of. Some evenings I sit on the backyard swing, watching the red desert sunset, and take out Mr. Ellis's letter to read for the 1,000th time. I whisper into the wind, "Grandpa, I'm living with decency now, just like you wanted." I no longer hate the Davenports. They defeated themselves. I heard Jace's drinking got worse, Layla got divorced, the family company is crumbling from internal fighting. And me? I won, not with money, but by staying true to who I am. 2 years after receiving the inheritance, I stand in front of the mirror and look at a 35-year-old man with no dark circles under his eyes, no hunched back from carrying the world, and I smile. I survived. I won, and most importantly, I lived the way Mr. Ellis told me to, a life of freedom, peace, and dignity. Exactly what he hoped I would have. I thought I had truly closed the door on my past. I was wrong. One Friday evening at the end of October, light rain was falling. I was curled up on the sofa reading a book, a mug of hot tea steaming on the table. The doorbell rang, one long, frantic, almost desperate ring. I opened the door and my heart missed a beat. Standing there were 2 people who were both strangers and painfully familiar. My father, Easton Beckett, was now only a shadow of himself. Hair patchy and snow-white, face gaunt, eyes sunken deep, his wrinkled shirt reeking of alcohol. My mother, Ivy Beckett, looked disheveled, hair a mess, the thick makeup she once wore now streaked by tears and rain. They stood shivering on my porch, eyes wild like animals being hunted by the entire world. I stood frozen for a few seconds. Then I stepped back and opened the door wider. Not out of pity, but because I wanted to hear what they had to say. They rushed inside like wounded beasts and collapsed onto the sofa without being invited. Mom immediately burst into her familiar shrill wailing, "Amir, son, we're suffering so much now. Save your parents." Dad cut in, voice hoarse from liquor and cigarettes. "The money's all gone. The $3 million from the lottery. It's all gone, son." They poured out a long, tear and snot-streaked story. How they had invested every cent of the lottery winnings into a sure-thing real estate project because friends told us to. How the partner scammed them. How the market crashed. How now they owed the bank, owed loan sharks, had sold the house and the car, had nowhere to live, not a penny left. I sat across from them, hands clasped tightly, listening without interrupting once. But I knew perfectly well there had been no investment. I knew exactly what they did in the years they vanished. The luxury vacations plastered all over Facebook, the Hermes bags, the Rolex watches, the Michelin star restaurant parties. I knew because I had quietly followed Mom's page, not out of longing, but to remind myself never to soften again. I knew about the Vegas gambling sprees where they lost hundreds of thousands in a single night. I knew they lent money to friends who never paid back. I knew everything, I had simply chosen silence. Now karma had caught up, and they had come running back to the old ATM they once threw away. Mom wiped her tears with her dirty sleeve and switched to pleading, "You're the eldest son. You have a duty to your family. We have nothing left now. Let us stay here, help us pay the debts. You're rich now, $10 million from that old man. Help your parents, son." Dad nodded furiously, voice rasping. "You're my son. You're supposed to take care of me. I raised you and now you'll let me die?" I looked at them. For a long time, no anger, no pain. Only a cold, hollow emptiness in my chest. The emptiness of someone who has been used so many times that their heart has turned to stone. I took a deep breath and spoke, my voice calmer than I thought possible. "I no longer owe you anything. Every debt, every sacrifice, every drop of sweat I poured into supporting this family ended the day you left me with a mountain of loan papers and disappeared with $3 million. From that day on, I stopped having parents, and you stopped having a son." The air in the room froze solid. Mom's eyes bulged, her voice cracking. "What did you just say? You ungrateful wretch. You monster. I gave birth to you, I raised you, and now that you have money, you throw your parents out?" Dad shot to his feet, pointing at my face, purple with rage. "You'll be struck by lightning. You'll die with no one to bury you. Ingrate. I curse you." They screamed, cursed, spat in my face. Mom lunged at my arm, wailing and throwing herself on the floor like she used to when I didn't send enough money. Dad slammed the table, slammed the chairs, threatened suicide, threatened to sue me for being unfilial. I just sat there, said nothing. When their voices finally gave out, I stood up, voice ice cold. "Leave my house right now, or I'm calling the police." Mom shrieked, "You dare call the police on your own parents?" I already had the phone in my hand, dialing 911. Panic flashed across their faces. Dad stumbled backward, face ashen. Mom hurled a few final curses and bolted for the door, her slippers slapping on the wooden floor. Their shouting echoed through the quiet street. "Ungrateful bastard. You'll die a horrible death. Heaven will punish you." I closed the door, locked it, stood motionless in the living room. Not a single tear, only a strange tingling lightness spreading through my whole body. The door I had just closed wasn't just the front door. It was the darkest chapter of my life, the chapter where I was forced to be a son, an ATM, a punching bag for everyone else's sins. Finally, officially over. Not with crying, not with fake forgiveness, but with the calm of someone who had finally chosen himself. I walked back to the sofa, picked up the now cold cup of tea and took a sip. Outside, the rain still drizzled, but inside my house it felt strangely warm. I whispered to myself and to Mr. Ellis, wherever he was now, "I did it, Grandpa. I chose myself." And for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. The years that followed passed like a dream I never dared believe was real. I met Naomi on an autumn afternoon when I was 37. She came to Ellis Tech to fix her beat-up old laptop, the one she used to teach online classes to poor kids. Naomi wasn't stunning in a supermodel way, but her smile lit up my tiny workshop like sunrise. She waited patiently while I worked, then asked a question no one had ever asked me before. "Running a whole company like this? It must be a lot of pressure, right?" I froze. Right there at the counter, I almost burst into tears, just from one kind question. A question of genuine concern I hadn't heard since Mr. Ellis was alive. We started with morning coffees, then evening walks along the desert road where the saguaros bloomed bright yellow. Naomi listened to my past without judgment or pity. She simply held my hand tight and said, "I'm proud of you. You chose to live with decency even when no one taught you how." We married a year later in our backyard with exactly 20 guests, Mr. Landon Reed and a few people from the company. I wore a navy suit. Naomi wore a simple white dress. We exchanged rings under the old olive tree I had planted the day I moved in. Then Leah was born. a chubby baby girl with huge round eyes crying her lungs out just as the sun rose over the desert. When the nurse placed her in my arms, I trembled so hard I barely dared breathe. I looked at Leah, then at Naomi smiling exhaustedly, and for the first time I cried like a child. Not from pain, but because I couldn't believe I deserved this, a real family after years of nothing but motel walls and unpaid bills. Ellis Tech grew slowly but steadily. From a tiny workshop with 10 employees, we became the go-to place for free or low-cost computer repairs for seniors, the working poor and burned-out caregivers. Every month, I set aside part of the profits for the Ellis Davenport Fund. It wasn't huge, but it was enough to pay temporary wages to caregivers being stiffed by their employers, cover hospital bills for low-wage workers who collapsed from exhaustion just like I once did, offer free counseling groups for adult children suffering emotional abuse from their parents, people who emailed me saying they saw themselves in my story. I don't do charity to show off. I do it because I know what it feels like to be pushed to the edge, and I never want anyone else to stand there alone the way I once did. Every evening after closing the shop, I come home, lift Leah onto my shoulders and sing her to sleep in my off-key but loving voice. Naomi sits beside us, smiling at her two favorite people. Some nights after Leah is asleep, I sit on the porch under the thick Phoenix stars and think, the most precious thing in life isn't the $10 million Mr. Ellis gave me. It's this peace. The peace I paid for with blood, tears, and pieces of my broken heart. I've learned so much from my own journey, and if I may, I want to pass these lessons on to anyone reading this, especially those still being hurt by the very family that should protect them. Family is not defined by blood. A stranger can sometimes open their arms wider than the people who share your DNA. Mr. Ellis didn't give birth to me, yet he gave me more love than my own parents ever did. Naomi and Leah are the family I chose, and I am the family they chose. That is the bond worth protecting for a lifetime. Life does not force you to carry burdens that were never yours. Saying no, cutting ties, walking away, these are not unfilial acts. They are acts of self-rescue. I nearly died trying to fulfill a twisted idea of filial piety for people who never deserved it. Don't repeat my mistake. You only have one life, and you have the right to live it for yourself. Kindness is not weakness. It is the greatest strength I possess. I was kind to Mr. Ellis not because I expected an inheritance, but because I couldn't be any other way. And that kindness saved me. From becoming bitter, from drowning in hatred, from closing my heart to Naomi, to Leah, to life itself. Money is only a tool. It reveals character faster than anything else. It turned my parents into strangers, turned Mr. Ellis's descendants into wolves, but it also gave me the chance to live differently, to use it to help others instead of wasting it. And finally, my message to you, the one crying silently every night because your own family hurts you. Choose the people who deserve to stay in your life. Be brave enough to walk away from those who only know how to wound you, no matter if they are parents, siblings, or anyone else. You are not alone. I have been exactly where you are, at the very bottom. And I rose. I believe you will rise too. All you need is to choose yourself. Just once. I, Amir Beckett, once a kid who fell asleep in elevators because he worked 4 jobs a day, once abandoned by his own parents with a mountain of debt, once called a fraud by the entire world, am now sitting here with my daughter asleep in my arms, my wife's head on my shoulder, under a sky full of Phoenix stars. I made it, and I believe you will too. Just choose yourself, even if it's only once. 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 Only once.